So I just finished reading the Lorne game and it was short as hell. This game is the most fun I had this week, minus the bugs and hackers galore. So I like to be immersed in its world. Tell me more lore info, and why you chose to fight for a specific faction. Long, long ago, there was a man known as King Alfonso Argon I, who would unite the lands of Agatha in what seemed to be the first time in its history. One kingdom under one banner. And Argon did not succeed in his ambitions alone. With the help of General Malric and steward Feydrid, he conquered the province of Vanter, leaving their capital city in ruins. General Malric was Argon's most trusted and experienced general. Malric even formed an elite group of soldiers of what we now know as the Mason Order. They were to serve the crown and its subjects. Steward Feydrid is one of Argon's closest friends, and a very skillful warrior, one of Agatha's great, some could say. State of tranquility rolled over the lands of Agatha, but only for 6 short months. That was when King Argon declared war upon an unknown land to the south, known as the Empire of Tenosia. The armies of Agatha were quickly raised. Argon appointed Feydrid as his regent, while he was absent from the throne. Malric disagreed with Argon, not wanting another war in such a short time of peace. He and many other generals plotted a coup. The armies of Agatha were deployed. Their ships sailed across the sea and towards the lands of Tenosia. Argon even brought one of his closest relatives, Danum Argon, who was his nephew. Tenosia was ill-prepared for this unexpected invasion, but the same could be said of Agatha. When Agathan forces were deployed in the sandy deserts of Tenosia, they soon were overwhelmed, both by the Tenosians and by the scorching heat. They did not expect the Tenosians to muster up a large force in such a short time. Argon decided to strike the center of their operations, marching towards the capital city of Tenosia. But by the time the Agathans had reached the capital, much of the army was depleted. Many of the soldiers lacked the proper amount of water. Many were tired and hot. Unfortunately, King Argon went missing, his nephew too, and the armies of Agatha were split in two, one led by General Malric, who would return to Agatha, and one led by Sir Phidian Gold, Argon's second most trusted general, who would stay in Tenosia in search of Argon and Danum for many long months. When they returned, the Order started claiming the lands of Agatha, sending out couriers saying that the crusade was for nothing, that Argon had fallen, and that Tenosia would strike back. This inflicted a sense of fear upon the populace, many cities turning over to Malric. But Regent Feydrid caught wind of this attack upon their lands, and prepared what little forces he had under his command. He also sent scouts to discover the whereabouts of Malric, and Malric did the same, though neither discovered the whereabouts of each other. Malric decided to establish the Mason Order's capital at the ancient citadel of Vanter, making it anew. Feydrid sent a letter to Sir Finian, attempting to warn him of Malric's actions, but the letter never arrived. It was intercepted by the Mason Order, and Feydrid's whereabouts were discovered. He was in the cold front. Malric reached out to an old enemy of King Argon, the barbarians of the south, but Malric made a very critical error in his writing, many of the southerners knowing him as the one who conquered their lands. And the southern barbarians were split in two. One side joined the Masons, aiding Malric in his ambitions, and one side remained in the cold front to protect Feydrid's position. Meanwhile, back in Tenosia, the Agathans ended up finding the royals, but only one, which was Danum Argon, who would quickly be appointed king of Agatha. Sir Finian sent a letter to Feydrid notifying him that they were returning with the young king. When the Agathans arrived to the shores of their lands, they saw an unknown banner of which was the Mason Order, flying high above what once was their cities. Both the Agathan Knights and the Mason Order prepare for war, a civil war, and this leads to the series of events within chivalry medieval warfare. After many long years, the civil wars ended with a clear victor. The Mason Order had prevailed over the Agathan Knights, even slaying Feydrid in battle, and Malric crowned himself as the illegitimate king of Agatha. And this is what leads to his Chivalry II almost 20 years later. King Danum Argon II musters up another large force of Agatha Knights, preparing to take back the lands which are rightfully theirs, but they were pushed back into the north, into the cold front. And also, the Empire of Tenosia musters its armies and launches an invasion upon the Mason Order, proving King Malric's point. Have you ever noticed that you can't type the word Pete in chat? Have you also noticed how weirdly detailed the pigs' assholes are on that map where you steal them? There's a reason for this. Back during development, Torn Banner had an intern named Pete, who they had designed the pigs. Unbeknownst to them, Pete was a hardcore furry, who got a bit overexcited when designing the pigs. Horrified by what he'd done, Torn Banner fired Pete and removed all reference to him in the game's credits and company history. But due to development constraints, they didn't have time to change the pigs. They even went as far as to ban his name in hopes to keep the origin of the high poly pig a secret. But word got out, and the story lives on. Valen is the bastard heir rudum of both Mason and Agatha, being born to Malric and Argon I's daughter, Princess Saray, out of wedlock, who is the rightful king. Any way you look at it, it really is Argon II. The things we know about Argon II is that he might be the son of Argon I. There is the possibility he isn't, that he was raised to claim the throne, and that he genuinely seems to believe what he says and cares for his people. If he is the son of Argon, then the kingdom's his by birthright. If he isn't related to Argon I and is a pretender, he still is the most qualified person we know of to be king, and Mason Creed is that a person's birth doesn't matter. People rise in rank based on their capabilities. He was literally raised from birth to be on the throne, and he's very talented in the things a king needs to be. Plus, he genuinely believes what he says. If he's actually Argon II, then by Argarthian standards, he should be king. If he's not, then by Mason standards, he should be king, as he's the most qualified person for the job. Were the Masons always pagans, or did they have the same beliefs as the Agathians before Malric? There's not really anything in the wiki about their religion specifically, but we can speculate based on context. Argon I only united the continent of Agatha only one banner about 22-ish years before the events of Chivalry II. Before that, Agatha had been a bunch of different kingdoms, ruled by different kings, with their own cultures. While there's the main state-sponsored religion that the Agathian Knights follow, more than likely other kingdoms had their own cultural religions that were either suppressed or wiped out when Argon I took over. The pagan religion we see in Aberfell is likely something like that. The Masons, as far as I know, don't have a centralized religion. My assumption is they treat it like how many polytheistic countries, like the Greeks or Romans, treated multiple gods and religions. They just say, yep, your gods are real, and my gods are real, and we can choose which ones to worship based on what we need. What is the difference between the Mason and Agathian ideologies? Why did Malric portray Argon? Agatha, respect your superiors, die with valor, fight with honor, defend the weak and innocent, act in the best interest of your king and countrymen, praise the gods for all they give us. Masons, glory is death by the sword, the weak shall serve the strong. A man's worth is judged by his competence, you keep what you kill. Change is necessary for improvement. Mercy on the battlefield is a trait of the weak. He who lives to run away, he who lives to fight another day. Malric was originally from a peasant family, and rose to be Argon's right-hand man through his skills and expertise. However, he was always treated differently than the king's other advisors because of his background. Malric was known to be a quiet but decisive and wrathful man in those years. Where it all comes to a head is when Argon I announces the Crusade. Basically, he just united the 8 or so kingdoms a year earlier, then immediately declares a new foreign war. Theories are varied as to why. From he was bored of peace to he was looking for resources. But Malric knew immediately that this wasn't going to go well. As soon as the Crusade is announced, Malric sets out to make a secret sub-faction, which we know as the Masons. During the Crusade, while the rest is decimated, Malric ensures his forces stay unharmed, and when Argon I goes missing, he goes back to Agatha, declaring the Crusade lost, while the rest of the Agathian army searches for Argon. Has Tenosia done anything to incur the wrath of Agatha and Mason? Not really. Before the Crusades, they've been at peace with everyone for a long time. When Agatha invaded, the Tenosians were completely unprepared. They hadn't fought in forever. Is Danum, Argon, and Argon II the same person? Supposedly, no.